Moving Image Madison with myself, James Kreul, and not that Rob Thomas with Rob Thomas. We've been going to see some films together, and then we're going to talk about them. So we'll go right into it with a review of Wizard of the Kremlin. And by the way, hello, Rob. I should probably say
Hey, Jim. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Very well. So quick synopsis, and then we'll go into the discussion. The Wizard of the Kremlin examines the career of Vadim Baranov, a fictionalized spin doctor who helped shape modern Russia in the transition between the Soviet Union and the Russian Federation. Paul Dano plays Baranov, who starts out as an avant-garde theater director, then starts to earn social and political stature as a producer of popular reality television shows, and eventually becomes the right-hand man to Vladimir Putin, played by Jude Law, when Putin is first recruited to run for political office. The film is framed as an interview between Baranov and a journalist played by Jeffrey Wright, and then flashback scenes show us Baranov's career, his relationships, his personal highs and lows between the 80s and present day. It's an adaptation of a very acclaimed French novel of the same name, and it's directed by Oliver Assayas, who's known for his films like Personal Shopper and his miniseries like Carlos and Irma Vep. So yeah, interesting film. And do you want to start off, Rob?
Yeah. So we saw this at a mystery movie.
Yes.
And this was one I was pretty sure it was going to be this movie because it was certainly longer than the other candidates. And I saw the trailer. I saw Jude Law as Putin, and I got extremely concerned that it would be one of those, there's nothing sadder than when somebody makes a play for Oscar where they play a real life person and it just completely misses the mark, and it's like a little embarrassing.
Right.
I thought he was quite good at this, and B, very wisely, he's a supporting character in this, so
Right.
He doesn't come in until probably an hour in.
Right.
I think overall, I quite enjoyed, I would say, most of it. I think it's, it is based on a book, and it's a very, I would say, literate, erudite adaptation. Lots of voiceover narration, lots of, I thought, pretty clever lines, often by Paul Dano, who is an interesting character. He plays him as sort of like you watch him go through 30 years of Russian history, start out as this rather avant-garde theater director, and then move into reality TV, and then eventually become, the power behind the throne, or the microphone behind the throne.
Right.
And it's an interesting, because he's always sort of at a remove and talking about power. He has all these aphorisms that, like, if you don't seize power, power seizes you, which are can be sort of Yakov Smirnoffian, I guess, in a way, if you remember that comedian.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right.
But also I think are very entertaining. And it's just a very interesting story. I think the fact that Dano's character, Baranov, is fictional, although I guess he's based on a real person, frees the movie up to be a little more sweeping, fast and loose, not as wedded to the facts and sort of riffing off the facts. So, we can get into other aspects of it, but that was my overall impression.
Yeah, we'll talk more about that connection to the real life person that it's inspired on, because I knew a little bit about that person, which then shaded how I responded to this film. But Paul Dano is in terms of his performance, it's also an interesting, like, very subdued performance that is supposed to carry the the whole film through its as you mentioned, somewhat long length, and it's sort of a challenge to sort of keep going at this sort of slow pace of delivery. Yeah. And it's an interesting choice. And overall, I liked it, and I liked the performance, and I liked all the performances actually in the film, including Jude Law. And certainly, I learned a lot, or it reinforced a lot of things that I sort of knew but didn't know in, like, sort of really concrete terms about the period. So I think it definitely has value on that end, and certainly entertaining through the course of the running time.
There's this other framing device, which is Jeffrey Wright,
Right.
and I assume this is right from the novel, where he's like this author or writer, I guess, and he's in Russia researching a book on. I think the author's name is Zamyatin.
Oh yes, by the way.
You have a copy? I read that. I took a Russian fiction class in college. And we read that. Supposed to be the inspiration for 1984 and Brave New World, right? It's sort of a dystopian.
Right, dystopian future. And as you know, I think I've mentioned in other conversations, I'm sort of on a vintage sci-fi kick in terms of reading. Yeah. So this is on my shelf. It's on my TBR list, as the kids say, to be read.
Okay.
But I have not read it yet. But as soon as they started talking about it in the film, I was like, oh, I know exactly what they're talking about. And I'll come back to that in a moment in terms of the whole avant-garde beginning of his career. So, but
because they stage a version of that book, right? The stage version, So, but that just adds to the whole literary nature of the movie. I think that there's this, a writer, talking to a writer and telling his story. And it was, I think it's interesting because I think, the movie is like one hothead after another, from Putin to there's a media mogul. Is it Baranovsky? I can't remember his name.
Well, there's Boris, and Boris is the TV executive type guy.
Boris is the one I'm thinking of.
Okay.
Yeah. And a larger than life figure. There's Yeltsin, who I think a guy plays sort of briefly. These sort of oversized characters. Right. And then Dano is sort of underplaying all the way through as this sort of like, calm voice in the room, kind of observing, even though he's also a participant in what's going on. So it's an interesting perspective. It's slower, I think, than if it was like following Putin and I think, the havoc he wreaked. But I thought it was interesting perspective and made for, I thought, an entertaining look at, like, as you said, the last 30 years of Russian history and learning and seeing like how quickly it changed. Like I wrote in my review that it was like in the first act, they're like speed running the 60s and the 80s simultaneously. And it's, it's freedom, but it's also complete chaos. And then, the Boris character says people want stability, and Putin's, right or wrong, going to give that to them. Right. So I found that an interesting perspective. I guess we don't often go to the movies to learn, right? But right. I did find it interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. In terms of critiques, then, the strength of the film, I think, is as a film and as drama is more in the first half, where his political rise is also tied in with very specific relationships and tension between certain characters. Yep. So the young Dmitri, the sort of the new wealth figure that he comes to know. There's then a romantic triangle between Dmitri and Vadim's girlfriend partner Ksenia, who's played by Alicia Vikander. And so that has an interesting dynamic while that's going on. But at some point, Dmitri sort of disappears. So like then there's not.
He gets arrested.
Way down the line. Then he really disappeared. But he's also not in the scenes.
Yeah, right.
And then his relationship with Boris, who we just mentioned, who's Vadim's sort of in on the meetings to recruit Putin to run for office. There's also a point where there's a split with Boris, and then that tension of that relationship is sort of not there. And then you sort of get scene after scene of sort of more explaining things at meetings. And we talked about this briefly after the film, like, a lot of tea is poured, a lot of, sort of variations on the same setup of, call a meeting, sit down, talk about it, And, one observation I made about Alicia Vikander's performance is, I don't know if you noticed this, but it seemed like scene after scene, she tried to figure out new ways to sit down. Sometimes she's very uncomfortable on this couch, and then sometimes she sort of tucks her legs under
Mhm.
her feet under herself, and all these different things just to try to make like a sit down meeting more, and like some variation in them. Um,
At least she was
so
trying. At least she
yeah,
was
no, and I mean it's really interesting to like make those
trying.
kinds of choices to like
Right.
provide more variation. Um, the other thing to tie it back into this and the whole sort of avant-garde career at the beginning. So it's inspired by Vladislav Surkov. That's the figure, the real life figure, who Dano's character is loosely based on. And I've seen the documentary by Adam Curtis, Hypernormalization, which is a lot of things, but it's among the things it's about is how Surkov drew from avant-garde techniques to create confusion between competing social and political groups, which is mentioned in the film. But again, it's presented as a series of meetings between different groups, heads of the groups,
Yeah.
whereas it doesn't have kind of the what's going to happen next kind of anxiety that actually we sort of feel now in terms of
Right.
the whole the parallel for in the American scene is the what's Bannon's phrase, flood the zone, like just
Yeah.
make things as as many things for people to worry about as possible, and that even that confusion is advantageous.
In the movie, Baranov refers to it as twisting the wire, like how
Right,
you twist the wire one way and twist it the other, and
right, right.
um, and
But
which is a
he describes it, but we don't see it, and
exactly.
that's and there's the scene with the uh, the internet company that's formed, and how they're going to intervene on American politics with this network, but it's discussed. It's not, there's sort of that
Right.
lack of visualization in the second half of the film that is sort of a drawback.
Yeah, which is probably relevant to the character who was insulated from the effects downstream of what he does.
Right.
Um, However, I agree with you that as the character, I think, becomes more isolated from those uh, competing supporting characters, the film gets more isolated, I think, from those conflicts, and it becomes sort of a kind of like you said, kind of just like you know, he did this, and then he did this, and then he
A
did this.
discussion or a lecture or
I mean, he even designs the uniforms for the Sochi Olympics, but then you don't even see
right,
that.
right,
So he becomes kind of this Forrest Gump character who's like at the center. But again, as you say, the film really relies on us to experience the effects of that because we live in the world that he created to some degree.
right,
But in the inside the film, it leads to a little repetition, and there's an attempt to, I think, bring back the Alicia Vikander character and humanize him a little bit more. But yeah, I agree with you. I think the first half, the rise, watching Russia change, watching him get inside Putin's orbit is the more interesting half of the movie. Yeah.
right. In terms of like visual storytelling, yeah,
Yes, right. Yeah, yeah,
yeah. So
yeah.
very good. So overall, I think I'm glad we're experimenting with these mystery movies. I mean, what I like about it is that I might have selected not to see this if given the
Yeah,
choice, or
right.
I wouldn't be immediately drawn to it. But because we're doing this, you're seeing more of a range of sort of like a little bit of everything that's playing in the theaters. So I think that's been very helpful to keep in mind that there are different reasons to go to different types of films, and sometimes we sort of get in a rut of watching, only going to a certain type of film and thinking, oh, I don't want to see that. But I think there's valuable of sampling as many things as you can.
Yeah, I think that we're in this 2-track system in theaters where there's one huge movie opening every week, and then there's all these little ones kind of that are and I think it's interesting to see them still on the big screen and like you said, have different experiences with those movies with an audience, because those mystery movie screenings are often pretty full, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, I would I would gather Wizard of the Kremlin will never have as packed a house
Right.
as it has it as mystery movie screening.
Right.
Yeah.
Paul Dano doesn't pack them in the way he used to.
Sadly, no.
Yeah. So, okay. Well, thank you, everyone. And keep reading us at our Substacks. Mine is Moving Image Madison, and Rob's is Not That Rob Thomas. And we will be following up with more mystery movie reviews shortly. So thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time. And thank you, Rob.
Thanks, Jim.